Welcome back to the Convo Couch, everyone. Pasta Jardula here.
And I'm Fiorella.
And Johnny Sue on the ones and twos, and Oz with the overalls, hanging on out, engineering, doing all his things, like a chicken wang thing, fam. How you doing over there?
Good, fam. Good. A little tired from the weekend, but good.
Yeah, I mean, wow, though. I mean, right? Me too. Like, I'm still trying to recover, but I feel like I went into the Matrix or came out, or like in that thing in Poltergeist. Like, I went into the light and I made it out with it with Carol Ann and my sanity. So, it is tiring. I'm still kind of recovering, but man, there's a lot of stuff we got to cover, and like we've been away for like what, since Friday now. It's been like 3 days, and there was so much shit I wanted to cover today that I had to kick to tomorrow's show because we already have a loaded folder.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think our peeps are ready to hear some of our opinions on a lot of things that are out there. So there's going to be a lot of interesting conversations today. And I'm looking forward to it too, as well, despite being tired. So let's knock this baby out of the park.
Yeah. Just want to let everybody know that tomorrow we will be having on Alex Rubinstein to talk about his latest article, which was really, really well done, to be honest. And then Friday, we're going to have some members from Medicare for All come on and talk about a protest they're doing at Nancy Pelosi's house, which is more of the stuff I want to see. So yeah, I know. Let's get to it. I want to say hi to our friend Trey Wright, who was the first in the door to give us a Super Ray contribution. He says, "Love you all." Nice to see Steve Cutler and Lucky Burrito in the chats. We're just getting here. Guys, please share and subscribe and hit the bell because, we're constantly suppressed here, especially on YouTube. I know YouTube gets a lot of people to Rokfin, and we're going to have Rokfin only sections today. But we are going to talk about some things that have been in the mainstream. So fam, let's get started, I guess. So this story is actually a few weeks old. I believe we were talking about since January 6th when Pasta Johnny and I all attended. Steve was there, Jason Burmas was there. We knew that this was going to be used and manipulated to pretty much extinguish our civil liberties and our civil rights. And that's exactly what happened thereafter. There was, the division of the left versus the right, which has always been divided. But in this way, it was done more so as an attempt to have people become police informants, have people start really loving the FBI. And, we said from the start that this was a psyop. And it turns out we've been proven right in terms of the undercover cops working within this whole, what they called an insurrection, what we knew was more of a riot. And we knew that any sort of restriction on censorship or on protesting or on any sort of riot was going to always come back on the left. We told them this from the start. This is what always happens. So it turns out that is unfortunately the case for an anarchist named Daniel Baker, who was sentenced to federal prison in Florida, a capital threat case. So he's actually from here. And Daniel Baker was a U.S. Army veteran who was a turned overseas militia member who posted a violent, quote unquote, call to arms online ahead of the feared right-wing protest at the Florida Capitol. And he was sentenced this a few weeks ago. And the U.S. District Judge Alan Windsor sentenced him to 44 months, which equates to about 3.5 years in prison during a hearing at the federal courthouse in Tallahassee. He also ordered him to serve 3 years of federal supervision following his release. So kind of like 3 years probation. On January 15th, the FBI descended on Baker's High Road apartment, arresting him after he posted online calls to rise up with, quote, every caliber available to confront the, quote, armed racist mob in Florida's capital. So the thing was, they suspected that the Trump supporters, the patriots, were going to go to the Florida Capitol and try to, have another little insurrection there. So he was calling people to oppose him, all the anti-fascists to oppose him. Jason Cootie is the acting U.S. Attorney General for the Northern District of Florida, said that the sentence should serve as a significant deterrent to those who would solicit others to join them in conducting criminal acts rather than engage in lawful debate. The free exercise of speech is central to our democracy. However, the defendant's threats of armed violence to inhibit expression of political views different than his own are both unlawful and dangerous. And then the last part of this article, Baker's arrest was the first in the nation related to the threats that surfaced after the January 6th insurrection at the U.S. Capitol by supporters of then President Donald Trump. Not an insurrection, but okay. His threats, however, came from the other end of the political spectrum, the far left. He issued them amid warnings from the FBI about possible violence at state houses across the nation from the right-wing protesters. So this is an anarchist, or who calls himself an anarchist, an anti-fascist. He was telling people on Facebook, hey, I'm going to go to the capital of Florida, and we're going to oppose these right-wing fascists that, want to arm an insurrection or a coup against, our current government. So he was actually convicted, while pretty much nobody else has been convicted when it came to January 6th on Washington, D.C. So the left is saying, oh, see, like the government is right wing and they always like punish leftists. Well, no shit. That was always going to be the case. This is no surprise at all. But what's hypocritical is that they are still trying to pretend that what these other people did is any different when it isn't. And so they're playing team sports. Once again, the left and the right are playing team sports. And this sort of just attack on any sort of free speech, a Facebook post can now get you jailed and arrested. And especially if you are left wing. So when you're supporting the attempt to call this an insurrection or a coup, and you're supporting shooting people like Ashley Babbitt or all of these things, eventually you're supporting that to happen to your side, because the fucking people in power are not on your side. Anything to say on that, Pasta?
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, I mean, how many times have we told it? I think we've said this a million times, like, oh, geez, it's not going to be used just for one side, and that's why you can never play team sport. It's going to be used for both sides, and they will do that. It's about, it's not about left versus right. It's versus up versus down, and upstairs wants to keep downstairs, silent, and that's all it is and stuff. They want to keep the people in line. So they'll use this incidents like January 6th to further infringe on our civil liberties, spy on us, hound us, do whatever. I mean, how about like the FBI coming to Magnus's door and stuff, saying these things are just going to get way out of hand. They're going to be watching every single move we make, and they're going to have their minions come on over and support them. So just buckle in, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to get worse.
I do got to say that the reason they're going to go after more against anarchists, though, and against people with these more revolutionary left-wing views, because they're not patriots. They tend to be the ones that say they want to get rid of the current government more. So they are naturally going to go after those people. They always will. However, it's not to say that you should be focused on the other, more so focused on the people in power that are trying to weaponize this and, pit people against each other. Now, The Intercept, of course, did a whole article on this, pretty much an op-ed that this person wrote, and she pointed out a couple things, right? She talked about how he was like, this is so unfair because they always go after only the left, but these are the same people that were cheering for them going after the right for pretty much protesting and rioting. I mean, the hypocrisy just goes on. So this is what she wrote. She said, Baker, a 34-year-old yoga teacher and emergency medical technician trainee, had no previous criminal convictions and has already been held for 10 months of harsh pretrial detention, including 7 months in solitary confinement. He never brought a weapon near a government building. He amassed no armed anti-fascist forces. He made no threats on a single individual. All of that's true. But what's also true is that the vast majority of the people there, I still have yet to find a weapon that was at the Capitol either. Like the whole thing, oh, they brought weapons. That didn't happen. They're still kind of saying, oh, on the Capitol, it was an armed insurrection when it really actually wasn't. She said Baker will face considerably more prison time than most January 6th defendants. Yes, because that's how it's always going to be. Because a lot of those people that were there on January 6th, we found out were FBI, undercovers, and the whole thing isn't to punish people for that because they actually pose no threat. These people weren't going to overthrow the government. Like, that's not what this was about. They were pissed off about the election and they were being gaslit and told that the election was, that everything was sure and that they couldn't question it. So that's what this was about. It wasn't about like anything of an armed insurrection. She continues to say, if there are moral arguments for physically confronting fascists, and here is a double standard, and I believe there are, they would have been of scant relevance in Baker's case. Zero such confrontations took place or appeared on the horizon, and no far-right mobs amassed at the Florida Capitol or on Biden's inauguration. This should have been a straightforward First Amendment case with Baker's online speech, albeit bellicose, judged as constitutionally protected. Instead, the formerly unhoused veteran has been made a victim of government efforts to draw false equivalencies between fascistic far-right forces and the anti-fascists who would see them oppose. You cannot say that only your side can protest. Unfortunately, these people that you consider fascists, some of them maybe, but the vast majority of them, again, were not at all. And so she's still using that same, like, oh, they were fascists and they must be opposed. Okay, fine, you can call them that. But then by all means, don't get angry when it gets turned around on you as well, because all you're doing is allowing for this to continue to happen. Obviously, I don't believe in fascism, but the fascism that we're having right now is so far greater than anything any Trump supporter has ever done, because they don't have that power. Like, these people do not understand power. Here we are again. They think like, oh yeah, like this, it's okay if anti-fascists oppose Trump and whatever. But like that, what about the people opposing mandates? I don't see these people talking about that. So it just shows you like how The Intercept is extremely pretty much just shit libs at this point with the way they create differences when you have to be consistent, right? You should be consistent. People should be allowed to protest. If you're going to call it a riot, then all of it should be a riot. Otherwise, we just keep dividing each other and getting absolutely nowhere.
Yeah, and that's what the purpose of the Intercept article is to do, is to divide once again, to pick people like, look what they're doing to them. They wouldn't do it to them. And what, can we go over exactly what was said in his statement? Was it a Facebook a Facebook post? Was it a tweet?
It was a Facebook post where he literally said that they needed to go and fight the fascists. He said, I think I read it already. I think I'm pretty sure it was. He said. We need to rise up with every caliber available to confront the armed racist mobs in Florida's capital.
That's exactly.
So again, that's exactly what. I'm sorry.
That's exactly what he said. I mean, there was no like something about
that was quoted.
Okay,
that was quoted.
So he didn't say grab a gun and let a fascist know what's what, anything like that. It was pretty much we just need to rise up.
No, I mean it's a violation of our free speech. I mean it's kind of. I understand why somebody could argue that, but really he's saying we need to rise up and blah, blah, blah. Bernie Sanders had said something like that. You could go to any politician on the left or even on the right that has said things like that. Just, we need to fight back. We need to rise up against these. He called them racist mobs. Obviously, not everybody there was racist, but the point is that is not, it's still a free speech thing, right? It's still for less they try to get Trump on though too, right? Like it's just kind of like once you go down this rabbit hole of, oh, they said this and that, like then it's like, wait a minute, like so now I can't say anything on Facebook because you're gonna arrest me. This is out of hand. To me, that's the big thing, is that now none of us can say anything, or they can literally go to your house and say, oh, you said this. We've already seen that with people like AOC, when she felt threatened, when I think it was it Mark or Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio. Also, somebody said something about Marco Rubio, and the police showed up to that person's house. We've seen what happened with that person who was in LA. And
do we have that was about as far as how many people liked the Facebook thing or how many people followed it?
No.
It? So we don't know if it was like, okay. Obviously, once again, too, the tactic of like, I think, buddy, your anger's in the wrong place. Like, you need to be protesting and rise up against the government, maybe not the other people in the streets. And that's obviously I might disagree with him in ideology, but once again, I don't see anything wrong with what he did. Definitely not to merit the fact that he should be going to prison. If they want to suspend his Facebook for a little while or something, you know what I'm saying? And some stuff was said in the chats or whatnot, and I don't know, and I would think that there would be something like, okay, well, they intercepted plans after this Facebook. If they're using the post itself, this is really fucking draconian over here. You know what I'm saying? And we better watch our when we say wherever we say it. So, it's a little odd to say that it's just a Facebook post alone. I mean,
yeah, that's what they're using. There is no, he didn't gather any people. Nothing happened. Like there wasn't like an attempt to. So, I mean, it's ridiculous. 7 months in solitary confinement. This is wrong. I don't care if I disagree with anybody on either end. It's wrong, right? Like this is, again, very draconian. Our civil liberties and our civil rights are being trampled on every single day in this country. And people are still busy pointing the finger at the other, whether it's the immigrant, whether it's the Trump supporter, whether it's the Black Lives Matter protester. They're so busy fighting each other and not understanding, like, these people are trying to stop anything that goes against the narrative, whether it's the narrative of the left or the narrative of the right. They're trying to stop it. And we need to fight that instead of like this bullshit that's happening. So that's that section.
It makes you think that the fact that the Intercept came out with that article and the way they framed it, you know what I'm saying, is that there is something going on behind the scenes where it is definitely theater and a push of propaganda to get people pitted against each other, period. You sense that in every step of the way. And you watch any media whatsoever. I watch a lot of this. My mom watches a lot of this Newsmax and OAN and a little Fox here and there. Now she's obviously matriculated onto the newer channels. But in those channels, they never sit down and have the debates and talk stuff out and get to see all the sides. It's the same polarizing, let's go over what the Democrats are doing wrong and Joe Biden is doing wrong. Then you turn on CNN and MSNBC just for shits and giggle, and they're still bringing up Trump. They're still trying to string out January 6th. So it's, we have a lot of forces that are working behind the scenes against us, fam, trying to pit people against each other. So, going out and talking to these people and people you disagree with, trying to understand where they come from and have a reasonable conversation with them, that's what needs to be done. And we need to make sure that we push discourse all over the place. Let's push conversations, especially with those who think differently than us. I'm sorry for rambling on.
All right, that's it, fams. Kristen Nye, thank you for the Super Ray contribution. It is always appreciated. AREM, thank you for the generous Super Ray contribution. He said, patriotism is supporting your country all the time and your government when it deserves it. Mark Twain. Right. Right. So again, I'm not going to get into that discussion about patriotism because I'm not a patriot, but I understand why people want to feel proud about their culture, whatever this culture, this culture is basically made up of a bunch of cultures together. So I understand why people want to feel that. But again, you can criticize your government, right? Even if you love your country, you can criticize your government, is his point, which I absolutely agree with.
I'm a humanist, right? And I hate that the humanists stole that word and stuff, but that's what we are, right? We're all humans on this fucking planet. We should love each other. We should love all living creatures. It's not about just where you come from. And I agree, fam.
Right.
Patriotism is a little bit too much nationalist for me. And it's not that I don't love this country or love the people within this country. I love all humans, and I want all humans to thrive on this fucking planet. So sometimes when you say patriotism, it can seem very narcissistic and selfish that we're just talking about Americans only. We love everybody.
Right, exactly. Guys, please make sure to like it on the Rokfin, like the stream to help us with the algorithm, and please share the stream on YouTube as well. All right, guys, so let's get to the second section because this is a section I really want to do. Now, remember, we're going to be pretty careful on what we say here, and we're probably going to rant a little more once we're on Rokfin only. But Noam Chomsky, guys, Noam Chomsky, the philosopher, the beloved, guy that so many of progressives love and have always looked up to. I mean, I've always liked Noam Chomsky as well. But recently, in the last couple of years, he started saying, you need to vote for Joe Biden, Trump is this. And then, of course, with the vaccine mandates, he has been saying vocally that he is okay with separating the unvaccinated with the vaccinated. And similarly, right now, a lot of people are starting to feel okay with that because the government is pushing it and Biden has increased travel restrictions. So I wanted to show this video and And it's Max Blumenthal tweeted it from Primo Radical, and then Steve retweeted that. So Max said, Noam Chomsky doubles down on his previous call for the state to segregate the unvaccinated from society. He has said this before. How can we get food to them? Well, that's actually their problem. That is a straight quote from what he said. Now, Steve said, Chomsky, October 2020, Trump is basically Hitler. Vote Biden to stop Orange Hitler. Chomsky 2021. Biden has a responsibility to remove by starvation, if necessary, these subhuman creatures from society. So let's go ahead and play the video, and then we'll talk about it.
When you talk about folks having the freedom to separate if they don't want to abide by these vaccine mandates, what would that look like on a practical level? Does that mean that folks need to just stay home and have like groceries delivered to them? Does it mean like separated communities of folks who are unvaccinated, or just, how do you think this would practically play out?
Same way as with people who say that I don't want to accept traffic rules. I suppose there were people who said it's an attack on my liberty to make me stop at a red light. It's government overreach. We don't want the state to have that power over my private life. Well, such people they should have the decency to remove themselves from the community. If they refuse to do that, then measures have to be taken to safeguard the community from them. Then comes the practical question that you ask, how can we get food to them? Well, that's actually their problem. Of course, if they really become destitute, then yes, you'd have to move in with some measure to secure their survival, just as you do with people in jail, for example. But that's really not the issue.
All right. So
that's your problem.
It's extremely fascistic what he's saying, authoritarian at the very least, because who are you to decide that they are a problem when even the CDC has said that the vaccines are safe and effective. They have also said that the vaccines do not stop transmission. They have also said that. That's per the director of the CDC. Now, if we start removing people and separating them from unvaccinated and vaccinated, what Primo was asking is a great question. Like, how would that look like practically? It's going to look like segregation. It's going to look like, fountain for these people, fountain for these people, restaurant for these people, restaurant not for these people. We've been here before. The only difference is the metrics aren't skin color anymore. The metrics are whether the person has been vaccinated or not by something that is not necessarily per the CDC stopping the spread. Now, we're not saying that you shouldn't get vaccinated or not, but what we are saying is it practical, right? It's obviously immoral to some, but is it even practical to live in a society where now you have another measure where people are going to live according to what that the vaccinated or not measure? And that's when you create a further tiered society where you have those that exist on either end. And it doesn't seem like somebody that calls themselves a socialist that embraces community that doesn't make sense to me, because when you criticize the current government and you say it's not feasible, it's the government, and you're an anti-capitalist like Chomsky has classified himself, how then can you uphold such a capitalist system that is pushed by the for-profit industry, right? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is sad. I think we've talked recently too about some of the stuff that's happening today, how it could affect the work of old, right? And when it comes to Noam Chomsky, manufacturing consent, that was his term, that was his book, I believe. It's been so long since I read Chomsky's book or watched Chomsky's videos from back in the days, but his rationale and his ideology when it comes to looking at the Palestinian-Israel situation today is still what I use. It's almost like you bend over backwards to give the person who's looked at as the aggressor the reasonable doubt, but still look at the situation. And we say it all the time. Look at the scoreboard. look how many Palestinians are slaughtered and children are killed compared to what's going on in Israel with their Iron Dome as we're funding them. So that particular ideology or analogy is still used today when we still talk about Israel-Palestine. It's just a shame that he is where he is right now. Not only just a Biden thing, this thing is like a real kick in the gut. When he's saying that people who are against a vaccine, not even just vaccines in general, but this particular vaccine, you know what I'm saying, that they should have to fend for themselves, that they have to figure it out for themselves, and almost talking as if it's a proven thing. I mean, if you just look at this vaccine on the surface level, this boop boop on the surface level, excuse me, you know, there's so many questions about it. So why would you kind of present it as like, oh, they should just be, you know, responsible enough and understanding enough to remove themselves as if this is set in stone? You know, and it also proves the last thing, fam, really quick before I hand the microphone back over to you, is that when people don't know something, they should probably defer to people who follow things. In medical school, doctors did not spend a lot of time going over vaccines, so it's not a topic that everybody knows about. Elections, another thing, it's not a topic that everybody knows about. So when you have these people who were like regarded as like top journalists or respected journalists or respected teachers or whatnot, and they start speaking about something they don't know without kind of putting the disclaimer that they're not experts in that area, or maybe they're not 100% sure, to see them speak as if they're sound 100% sure in these issues, it's another thing. It talks to, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's like a form of narcissism or what it is, but it is also quite frightening too as well, because the way he's talking about this is just like, it's disturbing.
Yeah, I mean, let's be real. Noam Chomsky has been out of the, you know, reality. He is a highly regarded philosopher at this point. He doesn't live in the real world that the rest of people live in. And this is my issue with the progressive left, is that they regard these figures, the vast majority of them, a lot of, you know, like white, older people like Bernie Sanders, Noam Chomsky, you name it, like all these people. And they live a very privileged life. I mean, they don't have to worry about the realities that the working class has to worry about. That plays a role in where you're at. He's an intellectual. He's not, you know, he's not really living in the reality of what would it look like if your family was separated, if it gets to that point. He's not living in that reality. So I'm not surprised that somebody like him has gotten to this point. While disappointing, it's not surprising to me. But what is really the worrisome thing is that people who look up to people like him are like, well, if he says it, then, you know, or if Bernie says it, like, it's just like, so because they're followers, they're sheep, and they don't have a mind, because a lot of people in America have been conditioned to follow, to look up to heroes, and to wait for somebody to save them. It's all over the Hollywood storytelling machine. So that's what worries me. This is not okay. Somebody who doesn't know, like you said, shouldn't be advocating and talking about things that he doesn't know about, and really dehumanizing people who made a choice that you disagree with. You're dehumanizing them. You're saying that they're less than human and that they must fend for themselves. That mentality is what led to the groupthink that led to the Holocaust. They saw them as less humanizing than the others. And so that is a dangerous route that we don't really want to go down. So
I think the thing that's really upsetting too is that these are two individuals, when you talk about Bernie and Noam Chomsky, who used to speak against the machine. Now they're speaking for the machine. And a lot of people say, oh, they were threatened, whatnot. And, you know, we always question that when it comes to Bernie Sanders. But I think a lot has to do with what you just said, fam, is that they have a comfortable life now and they're out of touch. They're out of grips with reality.
Yeah.
Almost like Bill Maher is another person we see and whatnot. It's like he's been in his bubble for too long. Noam Chomsky, Bernie, that's what happens to these people. And it's just a shame, because it's like they are actually talking for the machine, except raging against it.
Exactly. And so what did liberals do? A bunch of them said they were supporting Noam Chomsky. They were saying, yeah, good for him. This is great. Mehdi Hasan is one of these people that's some still regard as a progressive, even though he works for MSNBC. But he said Noam Chomsky is trending because he wants to get tough on people who choose to stay unvaccinated. Good for him. segregating people isn't getting tough. It's segregating people, right? So I said segregating and firing people who are mostly working class and often minorities, because that is the vast majority of the people that we're talking about here, for not taking a vaccine that the CDC has admitted does not stop the spread of the virus. That's per the CDC, is now good. The emotional left has lost its mind by rebranding Jim Crow-esque draconian laws, because that's what this is. We talked about it with our friend Garland Nixon. This is that. This is not anything different. It's just that the parameter that you're measuring by is different. But again, it is affecting very similarly the most marginalized people in society. And all these leftists who tout themselves as anti-fascist, as pro women, pro diversity, pro intersectionality, pro worker. That's not this. You're firing people for a choice that they've made that's none of your concern. It's not of my concern. It's only their concern, because it's not really affecting everybody else, unlike what the narrative that's being spun is. And so you're putting them out of work. You're putting them out of business. You're evicting them. You're putting them in a class that's less. And that is once again dangerous, fam. And so I know that that's pretty terrible, but couple that with what just happened in the last few hours. The Biden administration has now released, in additional details, the implementing of what they say a safer, more stringent international air travel system. This is directly from the statement and press releases from the whitehouse.gov, if you guys want to check that out. But they said October 25th, 2021, as we continue to work to protect people from COVID-19 today, the Biden administration is releasing additional detail around air travel policy requiring foreign national travelers to the United States to be fully vaccinated. This updated policy puts in place an international travel system that is stringent, consistent across the globe, and guided by public health. Starting on November 8th, non-citizen, non-immigrant air travelers to the United States will be required to be fully vaccinated and to provide proof of COVID-19 vaccination status prior to boarding an airplane to fly to the US, with only limited exceptions. The updated travel guidelines also include new protocols around testing to further strengthen protections. Unvaccinated travelers, whether US citizens, lawful permanent residents, LPRs, or the small number of accepted unvaccinated foreign nationals, will now need to test within 1 day of departure. And let me just note that on the testing for 1 day of departure, it is very hard to measure. It was hard enough to measure it within 3 days, right? Even if you're vaccinated, you have to measure within 3 days, and you have to make sure that it's the right test that each country wants, that it doesn't expire, it's not too soon, you have to make sure. It was already difficult enough. Now 1 day gives people basically no time to do this at all, and you must have some sort of rapid test. Sometimes those tests are often the ones you have to pay for a lot. Some of them run $150 to $200 a pop. So again, we're affecting the working class. So they continue. Today, the administration is releasing the following documents to implement these requirements. 1, a presidential proclamation to advance the safe resumption of global travel during COVID-19 pandemic. 2, 3 Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC orders on vaccination, testing, and contract tracing. And 3, technical instructions to provide implementation details to the airlines and their passengers. They said, with science and public health as our guide, the United States has developed a new international air travel system that both enhances the safety of Americans here at home and enhances the safety of international air travel. The additional detail released today provides airlines and international air travelers with time to prepare for this new policy ahead of the November 8th implementation date. As previously announced, fully vaccinated foreign nationals will also be able to travel across the northern and southwest land borders for non-essential reasons, such as tourism, starting on November 8th. Additional detail on amendments to restrictions with respect to land borders will be available in the coming days. And so they repeat once again, fully vaccinated status. If you're fully vaccinated, if you're not fully vaccinated, you have to provide proof of it prior to boarding the plane to fly into the US if you are a non-citizen or a non-immigrant air traveler. And then they talk about what will be required. they will need to show the vaccination status, and the airlines will need to match the name and date of birth to confirm the passenger is the same person reflected on the proof of vaccination. Determine that the record was issued by an official source, example, the public health agency, government agency in the country where the vaccine was given. Review the essential information for determining if the passenger meets the CDC's definition for fully vaccinated, such as vaccine product, number of vaccine doses received, dates of administration, sites, and vaccination clinic, healthcare facility of vaccination. The Biden administration will work closely with the airlines to ensure that these new requirements are implemented successfully. And the accepted vaccines. So the CDC has determined that for the purpose of travel to the United States, vaccines accepted will include the FDA approved or authorized and World Health Organization emergency use listed EUL vaccines. Individuals can be considered fully vaccinated 2 weeks after receipt of the last dose if they have received any single dose of an FDA approved, authorized, or WHO EUL approved single dose series, the Janssen, or any combination of the 2 doses of an FDA approved, authorized, emergency use, blah, blah, blah. More details to come. And then, so what's the difference is that previously all travelers were required to produce a negative viral test result within 3 days of travel into the US. Both nucleic acid amplification tests, the NAATs, such as the PCR test and antigen tests, qualify. As announced in September, the new system tightens these requirements so that unvaccinated US citizens and legal permanent residents will need to provide a negative test taken within 1 day of traveling. That means that all fully vaccinated US citizens and LPRs traveling to the US should be prepared to present documentation of their vaccination status along with their negative test results. So even if you are vaccinated, you still need to take your negative test because, again, the vaccine does not stop the transmission as per the CDC. You can still get sick. For those Americans who can show they are fully vaccinated, the same requirements currently in place will apply. They have to produce a negative test result within 3 days travel. So if you are vaccinated, then you still have your full 3 days instead of the 1. And for anyone traveling to the United States who cannot demonstrate full proof of vaccination, they will have to produce documentation of a negative test within 1 day of departure. And then children, requirements for children. So as of now, the children under 18 are accepted from the vaccination requirement for foreign national travelers. Given both the ineligibility of some younger children for vaccination, as well as the global variability in access to vaccination for older children who are eligible to be vaccinated. Children between the ages of 2 and 17 are required to take a pre-departure test. If traveling with a fully vaccinated adult, this is hilarious, an unvaccinated child can test 3 days prior to departure, consistent with the timeline for fully vaccinated adults. If an unvaccinated child is traveling with or alone or with an unvaccinated adult, they will have to test within 1 day of departure. So different rules apply. Limited exceptions for the requirement, guys. There are very limited set of exceptions for the vaccination requirement for foreign nationals. These include exceptions for children under 18, certain COVID-19 vaccine clinical trial participants, those with medical contradictions to the vaccine or contraindications to the vaccine, those who need to travel for emergency or humanitarian reasons, with a U.S. government letter affirming the urgent need to travel, those who are traveling on non-tourist visas from countries with low vaccination availability as determined by the CDC, and other very narrow categories. Those who receive an exception will generally be required to attest they will comply with applicable public health requirements, including, with very limited exceptions, a requirement that they will be vaccinated in the U.S. if they intend to stay here for more than 60 days. So even if they do an exception for you, if you're going to stay here longer than the allotted time, then they're going to make you take the vaccine while you're here. And if you go to the CDC website, it says before you travel internationally, make sure to plan ahead, check the current COVID situation in your destination, follow our airline requirements as well as any requirements to your destination, including mask wearing, proof of vaccination, testing, or quarantining requirements. And so if you do not follow your destination's requirements, you may be denied entry and required to return to the United States. So if you're denied, if you do not produce these documents, whether vaccinated or not, they're not going to let you back in the country, even if you are a citizen, because they're saying that you need to have all your ducks in a row in order to travel. So this is going to be a headache to go to the airport, especially international. Last time I went to Peru, the PCR testing, that was already a gigantic mess because you have to fill out a whole thing about where you're going. And it has to be a specific test. And if your flight is delayed, you better pray you get on a quick flight after that, because then your test expires and then you have to take another test. This is a disaster for air travel. And as Jonny pointed out, this is from the U.S. State Department. They admit that you may still be able to spread COVID-19 even if you are fully vaccinated. It says right there, your risk of contracting COVID-19 and developing severe symptoms may be lower if you're fully vaccinated with an FDA authorized vaccine. You still may be able to spread COVID-19 even if you are fully vaccinated. So again, all of this, and people still might be able to spread the virus. We're going to be talking more about, this stuff on Rokfin only, but I just wanted to really point all that out because it's starting, right? What Chomsky is advocating is pretty much beginning now, because the next step, once they move from non-citizens, is citizens, right? So we've seen it, fam. We've talked about this. Steve's talked about this. We've talked that this was the way it's going to go. This is the way it's going to go.
Nice. I'm not saying anything until we get over to Rokfin. Not a goddamn fucking word. Not a goddamn word. All I got to say is Steve told us so. He says, once they start looking at travel, let me just read some super race. Is that cool before we jump on over there? You have a good point. And everybody, you got to come on over to Rokfin because you got to hear this conversation when it comes to this over here, whatnot, because there are some things in there that are really like, right? Like I don't even want to talk about it. Like, let's just wait till we get to Rokfin. You have a good point. Is on Rokfin fam. That's the name. Is you have a good point. Left a very generous tip as well. By the way, thank you, double thank you to A-Rev and all the other people who left the love behind. Trey Wright and Mrs. Nye. Fee and Pasta. This is from you. Have a good point. Thanks for your hard work. You are part of our family. My husband and my dogs love to dance to your live stream music. My husband and I share news like this. Did you hear what Fee said about blank, 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 blank? Pasta said it's ridiculous to enforce blank, 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 blank. We love you. Thank you. It's a bleak future, but we need to know about it in order to resist. We cannot consent. Thank you so much for you have a good point. And then you also doubled down another love and said, Noam is not exempt from human weakness. His economic interests are different from most people. And Fam pointed that out. His legacy is not one separate from the influence of the ruling class. MIT was famously funded by the military-industrial complex. So that is where he gets his bread broken and whatnot, and who knows what it is. And I agree, you have a good point. It is just a shame. We talked about like when you've said so many great things in the past and you've done so many good things, that when you do things in the future or the present time that really are really just awful. Like I said, fighting against the machine, working for the machine, or fighting for the machine now. It kind of demeans some of the stuff you said in the past. And a lot of times, a lot of new people, younger people, won't go back and look at his old stuff because they don't like what he said right now, So they're two contradicting against each other. And it is kind of crazy that he is saying that stuff. To hear Noam Chomsky saying, well, those people have to worry about getting their own food. I mean, he's like actually advocating for the Hunger Games over here, So.
Right, exactly. This next section is going to be the last section on YouTube, and it's going to be on YouTube too because I think people need to hear it because we mentioned Fauci, but this is not about COVID. This is about the beagles, right? The dogs that were experimented on, and the beagles are some of the most docile, kind types of dogs. They're not aggressive at all. I mean, I have a beagle and she doesn't even bark. She actually found me in a parking lot and she followed me. And so then I just took her in, but she was obviously abused. She was extremely thin. She was scared. She wouldn't talk to anybody or be close to anybody for a while. But like I said, they're very, very kind dogs, easy to just, subdue. All they want to do is like snuggle and eat. They love to eat. And so these dogs I've known for a while now that they have been experimented on. One of the reasons I started using makeup that was vegan is because what they do, a lot of these companies, they test on animals, but particularly dogs, particularly beagles. And a lot of these experimental testing is extremely unnecessary. It's cruel, it's disgusting, it's abusive. And they do it, to say that they need to do it for these products, whatever the product is, whether it's a pharmaceutical product or a beauty product. And so this story that I've heard about, because the Beagle Freedom Project, and I don't think you put Glenn's tweet, but he talks about the Beagle Freedom Project. It's one of the organizations that has fought to release these animals from basically like concentration camps for dogs. And it's not just beagles, it's other dogs as well. And what they do is they keep them in cages their whole lives. They never touch grass. So the moment some of these missions, they've gone to China, they've gone to other places, and not just the U.S. But once they touch grass, they don't know how it feels. So it's crazy. You should watch these videos. You'll probably all cry. But it's that's been happening for a while. So it's no surprise that this is happening now. So, Fam, did you want to start with this or?
Yeah, sure. I can jump into it. It says bipartisan legislators demand answers from Fauci on cruel puppy experiments. Our investigators show that Fauci's NIH division shipped part of a $375,800 grant to a lab in Tunisia to drug beagles and lock their heads in mesh cages filled with hungry sandflies so that the insects could eat them alive, White Coat Waste said. And this is by Chris Spencer. It was written on October 22nd. And you can see the picture right here of the beagles inside the mesh cage. Now, immediately when you see this, you ask, like, why? What the fuck? I mean, what, if you're testing for makeup and whatever the case may be, but like, what's the whole point of this right here? Like, I'd like to know a little bit more about what exactly they are doing, but that is just disgusting on every single fucking level. And we've said it before about the people pulling the strings don't give a fuck about us. George Carlin has said it. They don't give a fuck about us. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't care. And look what they're doing. So the story at a glance, a bipartisan letter demands answers from the director of National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases and President Biden's chief medical advisor. He was also Trump's chief medical advisor too as well. And Trump should have fucking fired his ass, but never did. And then Bernie Sanders stuck up for him. Now he wants to fire Fauci? What is wrong with this guy? It should have been done a long time ago. And not for nothing, Bernie, it's sad that we're not hearing you call for his head. House members, most of them who are Republicans, want Fauci to explain himself in response to allegations brought on by the White Coat Waste Project that involved drugging puppies. And when we say puppies, we mean babies. We mean little dogs, baby dogs. Allegedly, 44 beagle puppies were used in a North African laboratory, and some of the dogs had their vocal cords removed so scientists could work without insistent barking. Now, fam, I don't know about you, but that really, really burns my ass, that last one.
Yeah, so beagles have a certain, when they yell, it's called baying. They yell a certain way because they're hounds. And so that is, it's obviously loud, especially when they're puppies. They don't yell as much when they're older. So what happens is a lot of, not just these people, but a lot of people who are abusive to dogs, they remove their vocal cords so they shut up and don't bark. And, and that's pretty much what it is. And so it's just gross. It's disgusting. It's abusive. There's no need to do that. Actually, what they found in this article, it was unnecessary to do that. And yeah, like I'll read this next one. It said, a bipartisan letter demands answers from the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases and President Biden's chief medical advisor. The nonprofit organization, the White Coat Waste Project, that first pointed out that the U.S. taxpayers were being used to fund the controversial Wuhan Institute of Virology, have now turned its sights on Anthony Fauci on another animal testing related matter, infecting dozens of beagles with disease-causing parasites to test an experimental drug on them. So they infected them with these parasites, right? And they were testing to see how well the drug worked. I think there are other ways to do that. And in the articles, they have said that it was not necessary to do that. says House members, most of whom are Republicans, want Fauci to explain himself in response to allegations brought on by the White Coat Waste Project that involve drugging puppies. According to the White Coat Waste Project, the Food and Drug Administration does not require drugs to be tested on dogs. I'll repeat that. According to the White Coat Waste Project, the FDA does not require drugs to be tested on dogs. So the group is asking why the need for such testing. Again, you didn't need to do that. You don't need to test these dogs. These dogs have more cognitive abilities. And I don't want to sit here and differentiate between dogs and mice and this and that. But there are other means of testing things that you don't have to use animals the way they, use these animals. Why did they test on these dogs that are like extremely cognizant, extremely aware in this disgusting way? White Coat Waste claims that 44 beagle puppies were used in Tunisia, Africa, and some of them have their vocal cords removed. And leading the effort is Rep. Nancy Mace, a Republican from South Carolina, writing a letter to the National Institutes of Health, the NIH, saying that the cordectomies are cruel and a reprehensible misuse of taxpayer funds. Our investigators showed that Fauci's NIH division shipped part of a $375,800 grant to a lab in Tunisia to drug beagles and lock their heads in mesh cages filled with hungry sandflies so that the insects can eat them alive. They also locked beagles alone in cages in the desert overnight for 9 consecutive nights to use them as bait to attract infectious sandflies. I mean, this is disgusting. And by the way, I got to say that if they do this to these animals that are defenseless, right? Like, imagine what they're going to do to you who can defend themselves. I mean, how do you trust these people in power and these institutions in power if they are capable of that to animals? Mace's letter was signed by Rep. Cindy Axan from Iowa and a bunch of other people. They listed a lot of Republicans, a few Democrats. Jimmy Gomez signed it. Good for him. First good thing he's ever done in his life. Ted Lieu even signed it. Let's see who else that we know.
But did they call for Fauci's head, by the way? They won't call for Fauci's head, though.
No,
fucking virtue they give them a chance when they put beagles on a TV screen in mesh cages. Then they'll open their voices to save their own fucking asses. But they're part of the whole problem. And so are a lot of these Republicans on this fucking list, too, as well. They all defend the fucking Pentagon and the defense contractors and all the shit. So make no mistake about it. You know what I'm saying? It's like Amber said on Roar Media yesterday. This ain't about testing experimental drugs. These are about making different biological weapons and all this other shit that they're testing on animals. And then eventually they'll get to us.
Right, exactly. And somebody pointed out that, now people are outraged because it's beagles. Well, here's the good thing about that in this tragedy, right? That these poor dogs were sacrificed to do this. And this isn't the first time, right? But it takes animals. It takes cute, innocent, defenseless puppies for Americans to really see who Fauci is. I'm all for that. If that's what it takes, if what he did about all the lying surrounding the pandemic and the back and forth and what he did in that during the AIDS epidemic to all of these people, if that didn't do it, and this does, I don't care, as long as people really start seeing who this man is, who Fauci is, because he is being revered to the point where he has a Disney special with the National Geographic, like he's some sort of hero, right? And so the fact that maybe this is what it'll take for people who have been praising him or praising the current system. Oh, well, maybe if he did that to these beagles, then wait a minute, and then what else are these people hiding? If that gets people to see things, I mean, I'd rather have that. I'm sad that it took that. But, because sometimes human beings have more, especially in America, have more compassion for animals because they're so defenseless, right? And so that might anger some people, like, look at all the other stuff he's doing. But at the same time, guys, I mean, really, if that's what he does to these animals, like that's what these people do, these people in power, these psychopaths, then maybe it'll make people think, hey, what might they be doing to us next? So that's a very good point, Pasta. This is absolutely just the beginning. There is no need to do that unless you're doing something more. So it's very sad. It's very, I'm surprised I'm not like bawling my eyes out right now. It's gross. I don't know what else to say. It's just sad. And I think people who have been kind of like, respecting of what Fauci has said or hold him to high regard should really start understanding where a lot of us were coming from where a lot of people have written articles on him and what he's done. So this is just the tip of the iceberg of the things that man is behind, and the funding. And by the way, taxpayer dollars. This is what this, instead of healthcare for all, instead of public tuition, instead of anything, this is what taxpayer dollars are going to. Isn't that disgusting?
Yeah. Hey.
Yeah. We got some Super Rays, fam.
Rob Janot, thank you so much for the Super Ray contribution, a very generous one. Been wanting to do this for a while, and now I finally can. Rob Janot also said on the YouTube before, I am a patriot. So it's like, yes, you are, Rob, and you are a Convo Coucher, and we definitely appreciate you jumping in and showing that love. We really do, my man. We love. Thank you guys so much. That's really generous of you guys. It's going to really help us on these upcoming trips, whatnot. YouTube's and the mainstream media and big tech's been trying to sack us for a long time, and it's because of all you. Not even if you leave a Super Ray, even if you just share our stuff and like our stuff, it means the world to us. It helps us out. So yes, thank you so much to Rob. And it's time for all you peeps on the YouTubes to get on over to Rokfin, where we can kind of speak our mind, because you know how we're censored over here. So hit that like button. We have 4 trolls in the YouTube audience today, so that's really cool. Our troll count is going up. But we still have a lot of likes too as well. So get on over to Rokfin now. Now is the time. Are we going to be able to pin that tweet?
You mean the link?
The link to Rokfin.
Oh, okay. Let me see. That's the link, and I'm pinning it. I pinned it to the top. Okay. All right, Johnny, we're going to Rokfin only. Shadow Ben, he was talking about the 4 dislikes.
What was he saying?